Okay. Okay, all right, good morning from my new office outside. It is July 5th, and I am really excited this morning to bring you a lesson about hummingbirds. So a lot of people think that in the summertime, teachers take a break, they go off, adventure, explore, and that is so true. But at the same time, they're constantly, or at least if they're like me, thinking about ways to bring fun lessons to kids. So July, a lot of school starts back up in August, but we're in this month where we start to get the summer slide, where parents at home, you're trying to figure out how to entertain your kids while keeping your own sanity, and kids, you're just trying to have a good time. And I have a solution for both of those things, and I'm excited to bring them to you today. So, hummingbirds are incredible. Have you seen them in your backyard? If you've been following me, you know that there's two kind of big lessons going on right now, and that is biology in your backyard, so learning to pay attention to just the goings on in your backyard, and that can be anywhere. Like, you don't have to have an elaborate garden or flower bed or trees to pay attention. Biology happens everywhere, so that can be in the cracks of a sidewalk or just looking up into the sky. There are bound to be birds flying around. Today I am going to bring you a lesson about hummingbirds because I've been seeing a lot of hummingbirds in my yard. And what I want to do is attract them more and support them and their way of living. So what do you know about hummingbirds? This is a lesson that will allow you to satiate your mind, body, and spirit. We're going to talk about all those things today. So, what is a hummingbird? Do you know? Have you seen one before? If you've seen one before, you're very lucky, and that means you're training your eyes to be a naturalist. You're looking out for the natural world. You're spending time in nature and being curious about it. So, hummingbirds move really fast, right? They are the superlative of a lot of things. So what I mean by that is they have the biggest brain, the most feathers, the fastest heartbeat of all the birds. Yet, their flight is more like insects. Can you believe that? Pretty incredible. So I think I'm actually going to run out of space on my phone to record. Alright, so in preparation for this lesson, I started with a couple basic questions. What, where, how, in terms of flight, diet, the anatomy, mating, and then other interesting investigations. What do hummingbirds signify for other cultures, which is really cool. So hummingbirds are really cool. We're just going to start there because it's really interesting. To the Pueblo people, they signified rain and wind, that was coming. The Aztecs looked at them for vigor and energy, which you can imagine because they're all over the place. The Zatka people, you can find them in poetry, or in pottery. So this was my rendition. But I got a lot of this information from my Pocket Naturalist Guide. And this is like super incredible. Look at that. Can you see it? 300 feet long, they etched that into the rock. And so if you've ever seen petroglyphs, which is rock art, that's sort of similar there to that. Okay, so I want to get to this really neat fact. Well, let's start from the top. In Utah, you might find black-chinned, broad-tailed, and the rufous. Those are the three most common types, but there are over 350 different species divided into two different subcategories, hermits and hummingbirds. Okay, the order is Apodiformes, which means unfooted, and the family is Trochilidae, which means hummingbird. Okay, so order, family, these are like umbrellas that separate out organisms. It's a way of classifying different species. So we can look at where they're distributed, and guess what? You can only find hummingbirds in the Western Hemisphere. That's the North and South America. And they're seasonal migrants, so they go down to Mexico when it gets too cold, and they come up in the spring and the summer and hang out here by this lovely tree, which is where I've been seeing a lot of my hummingbirds. Which got me curious about this question, why are they hanging out by the tree? Because I thought they liked flowers. So one day I did see them by these flowers. These are nasturtium, actually edible flowers. But for the most part, they're just hanging out by that tree. So I was wondering why that might be. They also like to eat insects. So maybe there's some insects by the tree. Maybe that is what's going on. But yeah, 90% of their diet is nectar, 10% insects. They are eating all the time, every 10 to 15 minutes, which leads up to 48 meals per day. And they eat half of their body weight in sugar. They eat all this food and their metabolism is moving crazy. Metabolism, all the set of chemical reactions in their body. Their heart is beating 20 beats per second. That means they're breathing 250 times per minute. All of this to maintain their high level of energy. They are, like I said, smartest. Their brain is really, really large, which means they can actually remember which flowers they've been to and when the nectar is going to be refilled. All right, so there are a couple cool things with the anatomy of a hummingbird. Mainly, I want to talk about this throat piece, which is actually called a gorget. So here is what a gorget is. It's the bright, beautiful colors underneath the chin of a hummingbird. They're iridescent, which means that it actually reflects the light to make those colors instead of having pigments that show the colors. So how that works is there is a photon of light that comes in, right? And everything that we see with our eyes, the color is what gets reflected. So let's say there's a hummingbird with a really bright color, green. It's that green that's being reflected off these pancake-like. Wavelength of light comes in, right? It's the do-do-do-do. It hits these shapes, and it either gets reflected, and some of it gets absorbed. So depending on the thickness of the pancakes, how many are stacked up in there, imagine it goes down and hits the top. That's going to be a different color than if it goes all the way down. And if you remove some of these cakes, you go down there. This is different than, can you think of another bird that has iridescent feathers? If you're by a pond, you might see a mallard duck. They actually have a similar adaptation where the light is being reflected, but they're tube-shaped and not pancake-shaped. So hummingbirds, pancake shape, gorgets, which are the fun. A gorget is just a neck covering. So if you think of medieval times, that neck covering that's on the knights, that would protect them, that is the same as what's on a hummingbird. Okay, so our knight-like iridescent pancake-filled neck coverings lead to all these different variations and some pretty fun names. Ruby-throated hummingbirds. Okay, and you notice maybe two things between, on the left is the males and on the right is the females. What do you notice here? So the biggest thing is that gorget, the male's ruby red throat, provides a attractive feature that he gets to flash to the female to try to attract her. But ultimately, it's up to the female to decide which mate she wants to choose. The mate then does this crazy dance where he plummets from the sky at 60 miles per hour. So imagine, from the sky falls, whoa, you can almost see one there, falls a bird, and then they stop, they pull up, overcoming 9 times the force of gravity to stop and hover, and that beautiful display is what attracts the female. She gets to choose, but they don't mate for life. The males go on doing their dance for another female. All right, so as we see the differences here, and you can see the different range and distribution, the blue being where they overwinter, and the red where they go to raise their young. So the males are actually pretty chivalrous. Imagine these knightly hummingbirds with their coat of armor. They leave the south, where the females are, where they're all living happily in the winter, drinking up the nectar on the beach at the playa. They the males leave first. And you might ask, why do they do that? Maybe they go and find a good place for the females to make their nests, to raise the eggs. They actually might be doing this to allow the females to have the best selection of flowers, knowing that they'll be okay, but they want to provide for their lover, which is so beautiful and very nice. Okay, and this leads to one of the more interesting facts about hummingbirds is how they build their nests for the tiny little babies. So the eggs, they lay 1 to 3 per season, usually around the springtime, though it varies for different species. The eggs are the size of tiny little jelly beans, and they put them in these tiny little nests that they make out of spider silk. And they use spider silk because, 1, it's strong, and 2, it expands. So as the hummingbirds get bigger, the nest expands with them. Pretty neat, huh? So once those eggs are laid, the gestation period is about 16 to 18 days. All right, so here's a little timeline for our baby hummingbirds. They develop and then they're born. They're actually blind, but at day 9 they start to be able to see. These types of birds are altricial, meaning they're born without feathers. So it takes them about 10 days till they get some feathers, and they look black before that, and they have some yellow feathers down their back. But at 10 days, they start getting these hedgehog-looking feathers. Altricial birds, like songbirds, need to have that brooding time in the nest before they can leave the nest because of that. There are also precocial birds, which are born with feathers. That's like chickens, ducks, and owls. And some of these birds need time in the nest before they can fly, but birds like ducks can just swim right out of the nest. Okay, around 3 weeks, they have all the feathers enough to fly away, but they're sometimes still a little weak, so the moms will keep looking after the baby hummingbirds. So if you find a baby hummingbird, just like out on the ground hopping around, you don't have to assume that it's hurt. It might just be a fledgling or a baby bird. And about 1 month, they're fully mature adults, and they can fly around and find their own food. Oh, before they can get their own food, the parent, the mama hummingbird, will go out and eat insects like mosquitoes and aphids. Mosquitoes, another good reason to have these guys in your yard. They can help eat your mosquitoes. So they'll eat those mosquitoes, they'll mush them up in their mouth, and then they'll regurgitate or spit them back out for the babies. So if you ever see one of these, they might be kind of moving their throat up and down, kind of pumping the mosquito juice back up for the baby hummingbirds. After 1 whole year, you can start the whole process again. Yeah, I guess the other interesting thing is those baby birds need to eat every 20 minutes. So that's a lot of work for a mama hummingbird. And those baby hummingbirds don't have the long beaks yet, which I think is interesting. Okay, so since that's every 20 minutes. Remember, our hummingbirds are eating flowers, 1,000 flowers a day, trying to find all of the nectar they need to keep up that fast metabolism. Here is something you can do to help your hummingbirds in your backyard. This is really neat. Okay, so I'm very excited about this. You can actually make your own hummingbird feeder, and you can do it in a recyclable way where you're using less plastic. I did buy this plastic base, I believe on Etsy, and I can include where I found this. Okay, but you just find a plastic water bottle, and I plugged this. I found this on a plog, which is the Swedish term for picking up plastic while jogging, plugging. Plicka and jag, it all goes together. One of my favorite activities. Okay, so then you poke a hole in the top, and you can screw in this little screw, and then they have a holder for it. And what you want to fill this with is some sugar water. And the conventional recipe is to do 4 parts sugar, 1 part sugar to every 4 parts water. So what does that mean? If we look up, we can see that this is 20 fluid ounces. There's 8 fluid ounces in a cup. Okay, so we're at math 2.5 parts of water. If I want to fill this up, 2.5 parts of water. So I want to take a quarter of that in cups of sugar. Okay, and do the math here if you're completing the worksheet for some credit. Do that math, boil that amount of sugar, 1 part sugar, 4 parts water, boil it to try to deter bacteria, let it cool, and then fill up your bottle. Okay, and then it's going to go to these little red flowers, and hummingbirds can actually see ultraviolet, which is really cool. What do you think this perching thing is all about? Remember how the order is Apodiformes? A meaning without. In science, anything with an A before it, asymmetrical means it's not symmetrical. Pod means foot. So pseudopodia, an amoeba, moves with its pseudopodia. That's a foot, it's false foot. Okay, so Apodiformes, that means, do hummingbirds not have feet? No, they actually just have really small feet. And most flowers don't have this little adaptation on them. So I am curious to see how the hummingbird's going to react to this here. Stand. Will they stand on it or will they just hover? That's my big question. The last thing is some feeders have red dye instead of the red flowers. But I hear that red dye is actually really bad for the hummingbirds, so don't do that. And I have another hummingbird feeder that is red. The plastic is red, and I wonder which one they'll like better. Okay, so many questions come out of this. If you have enjoyed this lesson and you've learned more, follow me on this website. This has been a presentation coming at you from Elements of Change. That's the group. You can find lessons like this and more at thewonderment.com/science@home. And if you liked this and you are in the area, come make friends, be curious, have fun, get messy with us at camp this summer. This will be July 20th to the 24th. Love to see you there. We'll learn about all sorts of things: hummingbirds, bees, flowers, snakes, moths, fungus, and like I said, we'll get messy. Here's another thing you can do. You can actually make a wild flower bomb and throw it at things to grow wild flowers that will attract butterflies and hummingbirds. That is super fun. They used to do that back in the day in New York to just beautify the land. They would throw tomato seeds into empty parking lots. This banana here with your hummingbirds, last and final thing, put that out, help increase the amount of bugs, fruit flies for your hummingbirds if you so choose. Okay, so this has been super fun. Thanks for learning with me. That was a lot of information. True adventure begins when everything goes wrong. Maybe that's true. Here's our backyard. Here is to observing, wondering, getting messy, getting curious on a Sunday. Fun day. Have a great week. Look forward to seeing you for this Wings, Worms, and Wonders. Email me at this holly.elementsofchange@gmail.com, and I'll get you all the deets you need.